Hi guys, it's Don from farforward.org. Myself and Phil played the second game in our two-game mini campaign for Saga, and this is the deployment screen. We're playing the challenge scenario. From the last game, I had captured one of the local Anglo-Dane warlord's daughters, and Phil had rescued two. So during the game, we can trade those in for Saga dice. So that would represent me essentially maybe killing her in front of the army in some grisly manner, picking up an additional Saga dice, and Phil could essentially parade them like trophies, to show that they hadn't been captured. Again, for a max of two Saga dice in a particular turn, keeping or observing the 8 dice maximum. So, as I said, this is a deployment. My army's up the top. I've 3 units of Bondi, 2 units of Herdman. My warlord is in the centre, and Phil's is deployed within S of me, so within 4 inches. Phil's army then is fairly close in behind. He has a small unit of Dane axes, a large unit of Dane axes, 2 units of warriors, and a unit of Gabors, the archers there on the left. So Phil at first turn because he finished deploying first, and he pushed up. And Phil's big tactic in this game was to get as much fatigue onto me as possible. So he was within very short of me, so he had to charge my warlord. He went in, he did a bit of damage, and he was able to use abilities to pile on the fatigue. So already I'm starting to hurt a little bit. He pushed up his warriors just to ensure that they were as close as possible so he could absorb a small bit of damage. This is the turn where I actually did the big damage to him. I was able to go in, pushed my herdmen hard. They were able to get in with my warlord into his warlord and did 4 damage, also taking out 1 warrior, pushed him back. And this was probably the game deciding turn, even though it was this early, because I was able to pile on the damage. Phil's tactics then became to try and keep me in position. You can see my warlord has 5 fatigue at the end of that turn. The Anglo-Danes have lots of nice abilities to pile on fatigue, and that's just what Phil did because he knew that would pin me in position while I rest. Thankfully, I can use my Njord ability to take off a bit of fatigue, but my only option, even if I rolled Njord, is to be able to get rid of 2 of those fatigue, and that's what I did. So dropped them off, pulled the rest of my force forward, but my warlord is still kind of hanging out there on 3 fatigue. But at least I've got some bodies in behind him to soak up a bit of damage if I do take some charges. Phil got a little bit unlucky here. He definitely piled on the fatigue again, but only forced me to kill off one of my guys in behind it because his whole army is gathering around my warlord at this stage. And again, my warlord, because he's on 4 fatigue, he will have to rest. So the turn became quite boring there. I had to sit and get as much fatigue off me as possible, while my herdman came down on the right hand side. This turn, Phil caused another point of damage to me, forced me back in, as you can see, forced me to transfer a large number of wounds to the unit of herdmen that were immediately behind the warlord, killing them off, and I've backed up into the warriors. This actually was the turn that gave me the opportunity to win the game, because now my warlord is far enough behind Phil's warlord that I don't have to try to engage him, and I'm winning at this stage because I have more wounds on me than he does. So if I can keep this position, even though we're just at the start of turn 4 of 7, I think I'm in with a shot. So here's where I start to back away with most of my force. The warlord gets up in behind warriors, and starts to try and put a bit of a buffer between me and the rest of Phil's force. After quite an amazing bit of dice rolling on the right hand side, my herdman, who ploughed into the small unit of Dane axes, managed to butcher them to a man. However, their victory was short lived when the other unit of Dane axes came in swinging and took out a lot of them. Though I took out several in return. I think I took out maybe 3, so that kind of hurt. But at least Phil had to deal with me, which stalled him for a turn. Because now at the start of turn 5, now it's the end of turn 5, as you can see I'm just backing away. Remembering that the picture here is essentially a 4x4 board, even though the game is played on a 3x3, so I have to keep my guys out of 6 inches of the edge of the board, otherwise I'm cheating terribly as I back away. Phil started to push his whole force up fairly aggressively. I'm looking at the fatigue here to see how I can kind of balance any attacks that come in. My guys back out a little bit further, just trying to keep away. Phil, I think, moved up, threw some archer shots into one of my units, peppered them down. His warriors went in to attack my big unit of warriors at the back, but they bounced. and then at the end of the game, I just pushed everything back. I killed the unit of warriors at the top right there, pushed the Gabors back, and game over. My warlord having suffered 2 wounds to Phil's 4, and that's a game win. So not a very Viking way to win the game. Basically knew I was on top and just backed away. A good game. I'm not sure what this means for the mini campaign. It's only a 2 game campaign, as I said, so we'll have to figure out some suitably fluffy ending. So thanks for watching, everybody.